Okay, there we go. Had to find the button. And it's 1 o'clock. I think we're just almost at 1:01. And we should be good to go. So if you're looking for 5 ways to build relationships and increase donor retention, then you're in the right place. So I think we're probably about, people are still rolling in a little bit, but we're just going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover today. I'm super excited to really, this is the first of a series just with nonprofit success here at Bloomerang. So if you've watched any Academy videos, you've probably seen me in a few. So let's just kick it off. So here's a picture of me, little background. I work in the product marketing department. So, but before that, I was in support. So a lot of my expertise and a lot of know-how comes from just talking and working with customers and nonprofits for the past 4 years. Getting to hear their workflows, getting to hear their pain points, the good times, the bad times of fundraising, and also working in Bloomerang. So I have a background in communications and technology. So I'm really excited to just be able to share some of the research and the knowledge we have here at Bloomerang with you all on how to retain more donors and ultimately fund your missions and get out there and raise more money and do some more good. So let's dive into today's agenda. We're already getting through the welcome right now, as you can see, but up first, we're going to just take a quick glance at donor retention. What is it? Why is it important? Why is Bloomerang always talking about donor retention? For some of you, you may have seen some of this research before, but I want to just revisit it, and I want to show you all, again, just those important points of donor retention and what it means for your organization. And then we're going to dive into why donors lapse, why they stay. We're going to look at some studies on what makes donors think. Why do they stick with an organization for so many years, and why do they choose to make a donation and just drop off? And then we're going to dive into the strategies to retain donors, so what you can do. And then to wrap up, we're going to see how those strategies fit into Bloomerang. And my colleague and my friend here, Seth, is going to be walking us through the tools and functions of Bloomerang that will help us retain more donors and be able to ease up your workflows for fundraising. And I will try to save about 10 minutes of time at the end. If you're new to Zoom, there are 2 options at the bottom. Right now, everyone's using the chat function. That's great just for sending comments, maybe some quick questions along the way. I'll try to keep an eye on chat the whole time, but it gets a little busy in there, as you can see. So if you do have a question that you really want answered, there is a Q&A button in the Zoom kind of control bar. So please put your button or your questions in there. And at the end, I'll be able to review those questions and even save them. So if we don't get time to answer it, I can follow up with an email. I will be sending out a couple polls too. So just be on the lookout. I want to make this an interactive webinar. This is for you. And I hope you can get some really some good nuggets out of it today. Here's just a quick thing for saying thank you for attending today. But for anyone that is looking for a CRM, is looking for a donor database, you can get 50% off onboarding for attending this webinar. So feel free to request a demo on our site. Just mention you attended today's webinar, and we'll get that set up for you. But I'll mention that again later in case someone's joining in just now. So let's dive in. All right, donor retention. Let's go. I want to launch a poll right off the bat because I want to see where everyone is at right now. So let's launch this. Do you know your organization's donor retention rate? Yes, no, you think so, you have a good idea of it, but it's not locked in. So I want to know kind of where everyone's at right now. See, just sometimes you think you know it, and then maybe you pull a report and you realize, oh wow, I was way off, or maybe it's been a few years since we've actually pulled the donor retention rate. So, all right, about 150 have answered. See, we have 180 participants. All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh man, people are still rolling in. I really want to get up the metrics on this, so I'll let that sit for a second. To keep that poll live for a second while people are still answering. So donor retention, it's huge. So for some background on some of the reporting and the numbers that we have, it comes from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And for what that is, it's a conglomeration of multiple organizations and studies brought together. So AFP, Giving Tuesday, other CRMs like Bloomerang, Donor Perfect, Neon, and Donor Trends. All these have come together, anonymized over 176 million transactions from more than 20,000 nonprofits, $80 billion worth of fundraising since 2005. I'm going to close that poll now. I'm going to share the results too. That's interesting. So the majority said no, they don't know there were donor retention. So with the fundraising effectiveness project, since 2005, they've had just a massive amount of transactions and have been able to pull trends and donor behavior together to help nonprofits stay informed and understand what do donors do? How do they behave? What steps do they take in the donor process, the donation process? Very cool. But yeah, it looks like for donor retention, this is just a breakdown, just in case this is a new concept for some out there. Donor retention is over the course of 2 years, or usually it's a 2-year span. I suppose you could knock it down to like maybe a quarter or a different time span, but typically it's a year or a fiscal year. And you just take the number of your returning donors over the amount of all your donors in your past year. So if you want to calculate your 2021 donor retention rate, you do on the bottom is everyone that donated in 2020. And then on top, you would do everyone that gave again in 2021. And then you get a rate. So that's your donor retention. And here's the results from that fundraising effectiveness project. And this is so important. And some of you may have seen this before. These are numbers from 2021. I was trying to get the 2022 numbers in here, but these ones are the solid ones I know for sure at the moment. So the industry average for donors being retained is 43%. So just a little less than half of donors, when they give, about half just don't give again. But if you look at specific segments of those donors, so first time and repeat donors, people have given in the past, first time, look at that, 19%. So if you really think about it, if you had 100 new donors this year, just imagine 80 of them are never going to give to your organization again, based off this trend. So it's pretty astonishing. That's why it's called, we have this leaky bucket here. So you're filling it up with 100 donors, but then next year there's such a big hole at the bottom that you're really only gaining about 20%, 19.3% to be exact. So the goal with trying to increase donor retention, notice that repeat donor is almost 3 times the size, 60%. So there is a huge jump in the loyalty of a donor if you can just get them from that first time status to that second gift or that repeat step. So that's where the hump is with donor retention, is first time donors. If you can bump them up to just be a second donor, your chances of securing gifts in the future almost triples. So really fascinating stuff. So we're going to be focusing on donor retention in general, but a lot has to do with that first time retention. So if you're wondering why Bloomerang cares so much about first time donor retention, it's this number here. So again, besides just the numbers, fundraising, and trying to just bring in more donors, there's some other fringe benefits of donor retention. One, it's just typically easier and cheaper than acquiring a new donor. So just keeping a loyal donor and retaining a donor, you tend to spend fewer marketing dollars and effort on that acquisition. You have more time freed up in some cases where you can focus more on securing legacy gifts, have some more committed volunteers. If people have been retained for year over year, then you suddenly have a bigger pool of people that are more committed. And then I love this last point, is that isn't it just more fun to work with long-term donors? I worked at a nonprofit for a few years, and it's great to build those relationships, not have everyone brand new, but it's nice to have people that have been along the journey. So there's just a fringe benefit of keeping people around. And isn't that the goal? We want to have people that are bought into our missions and want to stick around it. And yes, of course, upgrade their gifts over time and give more. But those are just some of the fringe benefits of donor retention. But for a really concrete example, just looking at straight numbers, this is just the numbers slide. I know it's a little scary, but if these are just two kind of hypothetical scenarios with, let's say, an organization has 5,000 donors. So you're starting with that in year one. The one on the left has a retention rate of 41%. The one on the right has a retention rate of 51%, so a bump of 10%. So notice on the left that by year 2, they're dropping off about half their donors. So therefore, their giving total for the next year is about half, and so they get all the way down to a grand total over 10 years is $820,000. You look on the right, and so someone has a 51%. Not only do they have 4 extra years of longevity, so notice they don't just stop at year 10, they go all the way to year 14 before typically that money runs out with those original 5,000 donors. But they're also gaining more money each year. This is just how the math works out. But so if you look at the grand total for 41% compared to 51, even though it's a 10% bump, that's almost $450,000 of a difference. So just imagine that when we're talking about increasing your donor retention by 5 or 6 or 7%, it sounds insignificant, but it can have huge huge ramifications for your budget, for your fundraising, just by upticking that retention rate. Really cool stuff. All right, so let's dive into, we're talking about retention, but the problem of retention is that donors are leaving. So why donors lapse? So this is, yes, it's an older study, but we see that it rings true for across all the boards. So why donors stop giving? We did a survey of lapsed donors across a number of nonprofits, and as you can see from the results, the biggest reason for why donors stop giving is they could no longer afford. So 54% said, it was just at this point in our lives, we can't continue to give just for financial reasons. I think we might have been there. Maybe you've worked at an organization, but I know I've been in that situation where I used to give and then budgets got tight at home and I had to just stop giving. So that's a valid answer, kind of out of our control as nonprofits. But I want to highlight these 5 that are in green. Thought the charity didn't need them. No info on how the monies or the funds were used. No memory of supporting, never got thanked. Poor communication. We think those 5 are in control with the nonprofits. These are some that we can work on, and just by doing some slight adjustments to your strategies and your communication, you might be able to stop those donors from lapsing. Yes, it might not be 100%, but again, if you add up that 9%, that 13%, if you can retain an extra 30% of people, isn't that the goal? So we're going to be focusing on the things we can change, which are on the side of on us as fundraisers, communicating and making donors feel like they truly got thanked. So on the flip side, so this is just a large a bird's eye view of why donors stop giving. So on the other side of the coin, why do donors stay? So from a more recent study, so in 2011, with Donor Voice, they also surveyed loyal donors, and here are the top 7 kind of results or the reasons why they chose to keep giving to their organizations. They perceived the organization to be effective. They thought that the organization was worth the investment, you could say. They knew what to expect with each interaction, meaning they weren't blindsided. They knew that, okay, my next step is that I'm going to volunteer, or I know that when I'm giving this, that the next step will be, a tour, or it's going to be a welcome kit. Nothing is ever coming completely out of the woodwork. Then these next points, a timely thank you, making sure that there's opportunity to make their views known. So that's a very interesting point about feedback, and we're going to talk on that in a second. And then also making feel they're part of an important cause, their involvement is appreciated. And this last point, I think, is a simple point, and I want to focus on it, is just showing info for who's being helped. So that's a pretty solid point of just showing where's the gift going and who's being helped with the money. So people will tend to stay around if they just know that their donation is going towards something that's effective. So on that same point, this is a very recent study in 2021 by the IU School of Philanthropy, but they surveyed what I call hyper loyal donors, people who have been donating for year over year to organizations, and their number one reason for continuing to give. So what content do they prefer to see from their nonprofit organizations? And over half said stories and experiences shared by the people that my gifts have helped. So that, I think, runs right in tandem with just giving info to where that gift is being used. is a huge step in donor retention and allowing people to keep giving to your organization. All right, so that's some quick background. I want to, I think no, we'll do a poll in a little second here, but the first donor retention strategy we're going to talk about here is segmentation. So I'm trying to break down each of these 5, I call strategies, into these are broad ideas, but if you can keep these in mind, I do believe there's some very practical ways that you can increase your retention. So first is segmentation, and here's an example. This is one of our customers, the Willamette Humane Society. And right here, we have just some email copies. So they made 3 separate emails. And notice that I tried to highlight the differences, which really, they seem to segment these by monthly donors, just one-time donors, and then they also did monthly donors at a different giving bracket. They were able to generate $17,000 worth of fundraising from this one email campaign split 3 different ways. So we saw that there's success in just simply segmenting the communication. Something as simple as just saying, hey, thanks for being a monthly donor. Right there, you're acknowledging their status as a donor. You're recognizing that they are kind of committed to your organization more than just a one-time donor might be. And at the call to action, which I highlight in both of these, is not just to give again, but to increase their monthly giving amount. Very simple tweaks to the copy. So instead of just blindly sending an email newsletter to every one of their donors, just segmenting by monthly versus one time can have huge results. So we found at Bloomerang that organizations who segment based on these unique groups, such as recency of giving, the reasons for giving, their interests, or even technically like their address location or demographic location, those have significant steps towards their donor retention rates. And speaking of those segments, here's just some of our favorite segments. If you're asking like, well, where do I even start? Like, how do I segment my database? Start with these. Start with your first-time donors. Try to find your monthly donors, lapse donors, or otherwise donors that just stopped giving. Take a look at volunteers who've never donated, or donors who've shared feedback, whether it's positive or negative feedback. They're clearly engaged. So even if someone sends negative feedback, or hey, like the process of this and XYZ is not so great, or you know, I was here at a volunteer event, and perhaps they have a negative feedback, but you know what? That shows engagement. So you could, you know, develop a message specifically for these audiences. So the challenge to you all with these segments is to sit down, you know, map out these segments, maybe get a big whiteboard and kind of just draw buckets, and each one, what theme do you want to communicate to that audience? Kind of the phrase is just to talk differently to different people. So don't have one message to everyone, but truly segment those communications and reap the benefits. Next strategy is personal touch. And what I mean by that is not just mass emails and newsletters. Those are what I call kind of cultivation pieces, but a personal touch would be like an email coming from your personal email account. So not maybe through a MailChimp or through like Bloomerang's mass email tool, but so here's an example. We had like a donor, and then so Mike here, he from his personal business address reached out and said, hey, thanks for becoming a monthly donor. And I noticed that they also made a quick 2-minute video, and they did like a sharing thing. So I love that the video too, that's more popular nowadays. And we actually have an integration with Grativid, which is a really cool system to where you can, if someone makes a donation, you can make a quick video that gets sent to the donor right away, goes back to their timeline. Pretty cool, but it's a great way to think about like a cameo for your nonprofit. So you can be able to just say, hey, thanks from an executive director, or thanks from one of the board members, and really add a personal touch to these donors and their experience. And what do we want to highlight though, because we do have a tool for it in Bloomerang, but we just see that the numbers point, all the numbers point in this direction, is that phone calls, they work. So we've seen that first-time donors, if they get a personal thank you within 48 hours, they are 4 times more likely to give that second gift. Pretty incredible. So if you really think about, it's about not just the quality of the thank you, but also the speed. So same thing with the second point of a thank you call from a board member to a newly acquired donor within just 24 hours. They're likely to increase their gift by almost 40%. So again, I really want to drive this point home. So this is from Bloomerang data. So this is from our customers, but I want to look at, so this is the percent of donors retained and the number of phone calls they received. So notice right about 33% of donors were retained with no phone call. But then look at that just within, with one phone call within 90 days of that first gift, 41%. We're bumping up 8% there. And if you do more than one phone call in the first 90 days, you're bumping all the way up to 58%. Pretty wild. So you really think about, and I want to make it clear that with this this infographic, that this is not calculating whether they picked up the phone or if it was a voicemail. So literally even just leaving a voicemail for your donors and just showing that, hey, we tried to reach out and just say hey and thanks goes a long way and can uptick that donor retention rate. And just to continue to really drive this point home, but the speed of the second gift, again, with a call. So with no phone call, the average gift is around 260 days. So you're looking at, I mean, almost 2 years. So, or excuse me, almost a full year. And then you go down to one phone call, you're dropping to 217. And then multiple phone calls in less than 90 days, you're getting at less than 2 months. So pretty wild there. Not only the probability of getting that second gift, the speed of the second gift, and also the amount of the second gift all can have dramatic results with just a phone call. So again, the median second gift with no phone calls is about 50. And then with any phone call after that, you're looking at potentially doubling that donation. So there is power in phone calls still, is what we're trying to say today. But outside of phone calls, just personal touch in general. So whether it's a phone call, a personal email, or if you're setting up an in-person meeting, I want to just drive home the point that it's not just phone calls, it's just really personal touch. It's making that donor feel like, hey, you know, I donated, and someone has thought about me and has made it personal. So whether it's a phone call or a personalized email or an in-person interaction, that probability of donating again is increased. And so speaking of personal touch, I'm going to launch the next poll because we're going to talk about cultivation. So kind of cultivating those donor relationships. Let me start this poll now and stop sharing that. Okay, so think back to the last time you sent a gift to another nonprofit, not your own, but another nonprofit perhaps, or maybe when you weren't working there. What did you receive after donating? Did you get any sort of personal email? Did you get a phone call? Did you get maybe a quick video? Did you get nothing at all? Did you get just a plain transaction receipt? You know, nothing that, what I mean by that is it just has like the date, amount, you know, just kind of more like a credit card statement almost. So I know I'm thinking back to my time, but I made a gift this summer, and it's interesting. I was passionate about the organization. I didn't get anything back, so I didn't even know if my donation went through technically. I mean, I saw it in my credit card statement later, but really thinking through of like, I had no idea if they even received it. So we're about 137. I'm going to end this in just a few seconds. So it looks like most 53 said about a personalized gift acknowledgement, auto-generated though. That's good. A good chunk of you though, just a transaction receipt, nothing fancy. And I see a few have said a personal email, which is nice. And then we have 7%, which to me is still a little shocking, of nothing. All right, I'm going to end this poll in just a second, but so I'll let that run for a few minutes. But cultivation. So this is what we're talking about. It's not just the personal touch, but it's also, as we were describing earlier, of why donors leave, is they want to know what's happening next. So this is a great example. College Mentors for Kids. There's a thank you for investing in our organization. But then I highlighted a tax letter with your details of your gift will be sent the next month. Perfect. There's the next step. You're just giving that donor the next step of the relationship. You're building out, hey, this is what you can plan on seeing next. I love this next slide. So this is sort of like a welcome kit, or really just like a thank you. And what you have on the right side is some you know, some kind of one pagers that give stories of the girls that are being helped. This is Girls Inc. of Indianapolis. They actually have a little flower packet there. I don't know if you can see, but it looks like a little flower pot. And I think you just water those and you kind of throw them outside and they just turn into a flower. So pretty cool. Like you're, showing that they're cultivating that relationship. They're sending seeds to grow. So it's a really unique way to do so. And then they have a letter on the left and I highlight at the bottom that they signed it. So one of their development directors just signed right at the end. We're grateful for you. So this is a great example of both personal touch and cultivation. So not only adding that personal touch at the bottom, but you're starting this relationship on the right foot. All right, I'm going to end that poll and share the results. I'm actually curious. So look at that. So 51% personalized gift mostly, but most people, so 32% transaction receipt only. Very interesting. So makes you think. All right, 4 strategies, feedback. So for this, Bloomerang has a really cool tool with engagement surveys. That's why I kind of showed this on the screen here. But whether you're using Bloomerang or not, feedback is crucial to the donor relationship. It's just like any friendship. Donor relationship should not be treated, really any differently in that sense of you need to get feedback. You need to listen to your donors. Be curious about them. Why did they give? Why are they interested in your organization? What things did you do that brought them to your organization? So you can kind of build upon those. But also for lapse donors. So here I have an example of what we have. It's called the lapse donor survey. Seth's going to show it off later, but you can set this up to where we'll send automatically to your lapse donors, hey, we saw you stopped giving. What happened? Why did you stop giving? And get some results. So maybe they just switched to a different charity that had a similar mission. They felt pressure. Maybe they just, again, financial decisions. Being able to pull and bring in those results is huge for building out your organization's communication plans. And then the last strategy I have is ask earlier. So this isn't necessarily the, this is kind of the last piece of the puzzle with retention is securing that second gift. But from our research and what we've been pulling at Bloomerang is that you don't have to be afraid to ask again. I know where I worked, we might not ask people for a year or two before they would give again, especially if they gave a larger gift. We just thought, oh, surely they've been tapped out. But what we have found, especially through pandemic, we've had some other webinars on this topic, but generosity has not slowed down, not to a halt at all, even through pandemic and as we're bouncing back. But so the donors are ready to give. And I will say they're just essentially waiting to be asked at times. So it never hurts to ask. So I think that's some advice I can give today is don't be afraid to ask. So with these numbers, we saw that the vast majority of donors will give again within that first 18 months. So 87% are going to secure that gift in 18 months. But I highlighted that within 6 months, almost half gave. So if you want to, really bring in that second gift earlier, try to go after that gift within 6 months. And we actually have a communication plan that maps this out in 90 days. So on this next slide, and we'll be sharing this out too after today's webinar, but this is a sample 90-day communication plan, or I really should say 85-day, but so it tracks all the way from the donation received to you have that very first phone call within 48 hours, like we were mentioning. And then we have a thank you note by the CEO or executive director, obviously bonus if it's a handwritten note. And then we have some surveys. And then what I noticed here is we have 3 email touch points or 3 newsletters. So really trying to push that, getting 3 interactions with the donor within that 90 days, that really bumps up that retention rate. And then also we've put in a tour invitation. If you have the capacity, if you have that capability, that's a great way to just meet your donors, give them opportunity to talk about why they got interested in your mission. So if you have a nonprofit that has that capability, think about adding that to your communication or your retention strategy. And then lastly, we have just stewardship phone call. So have maybe a volunteer reach out, just again, reminding them of the difference they're making, and then make that second gift appeal. And continue to apply these strategies of personalizing, segmenting, and getting those feedback loops in there. So with all this said, I want to show off one of our customers that have a success story. So this is I'm pulling in some Indianapolis-based organizations. Yeah, I want to just show off some of the really neat nonprofits that are here in Indy. But so Coburn Place is a safe haven. So before Bloomerang, they were at 35%. So a few marks below the industry average of retention. And then currently in today's, like I just checked yesterday, their donor retention rate's at 48%. So I was trying to run numbers for each of their years, and they've started at 35 and they kind of slowly bumped their way up to 48%. I believe they've been here for about 4 or 5 years, if I recall. But I love what one of their development directors said, is that the quality of the constituent communications definitely improved, been able to record notes and see the history that they've had with our organization. But this right here is, it's led to better segmenting and personalizing of the donor experience. So what they were able to pull from Bloomerang, and really this is strategy in general, again, whether you're using Bloomerang or not, but the magic key or the sauce that they had was just segmenting and personalizing, and that bumped their donor retention rate by about 13%. So pretty incredible. And if you recall back to our slide, what 13% can do, pretty radical, adjustments to your fundraising revenue. So I just want to drive that point home, that it's segmentation, it's personalization. There's not really any fancy tricks other than making donors feel like they are part of that journey. So I'm going to kick it over to Seth. He's going to give us a quick demo of how Bloomerang really performs these actions and can help save you some time and implement these strategies. So Seth, when you're ready, feel free to share your screen and take it away.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I'm excited to show you around Bloomerang and some of the tools that we have that will help you with retention and are really based so much on the best practices that Scott just outlined. And I'll start with kind of following the life cycle and the journey of a donor. And in this case, a lot of times organizations are looking to capture more of those younger donors who are more apt to perhaps to give online. And so I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just take a moment to kind of talk through some of the best practices from an online donor experience. Some online donor website experiences involve a lot of steps. And so I think one of the audits that you could do for your organization is just take a fresh look at your website from the perspective of somebody who's never been there before, and maybe just count the number of clicks that's required to go from visiting your website to actually completing a donation. And the more clicks that you have, the more steps that they have to go through and the more options that they're presented, you can pretty much bet that there's probably some donors that you're never even getting the chance to retain because there's just so much friction with that online donation process. And so I'm going to highlight here on the, I'm going to switch screens here and just highlight an organization that's using some of our tools to help them manage the experience from the donor perspective. And there's a couple of things that I like in looking at this example here. One, they have a donation button that's on literally every page of their website. So it's easy to find no matter where I gravitate towards as I'm kind of learning more about this organization. But you'll also see that they've customized their donate button right here in the front and center. So it's really easy to see. And then I've got a really simple process. So I've got one click to open the form. I select the specific amount that I'd like to give. And then I can plug in my information. I hit donate and I'm done. So literally a 3-click process from the time that I visited their website to submitting my donation to the organization. Then the next step is it's going to come into the Bloomerang database automatically. There's no extra steps or processing fees or rather processing steps that I have to go through to get that data into the database. And then as Scott's been emphasizing so much, those first-time donors are really important to make sure that they get recognized. And so we list those folks out right here on the dashboard for you to let you know exactly who they are and to help you kind of remember that those folks need to get engaged. And from here, I can either go ahead and process the call or I can assign it directly to somebody on my team. So if I'm kind of delegating some of these tasks out, I can do that directly within the system as well to notify perhaps a board member or the executive director that, hey, this Lisa here just gave a gift for the first time. Want to make sure that she gets a touch and that you get in contact with her. as I look at the donor profile, there's another key piece of information that I like to look at when I think about retention, and that's their overall engagement score. And in this case, her level is cool. She's just made a first-time gift to my organization, but pretty recently. And over time, I want to do some things to try to move her up in the engagement level. And a lot of times people ask, well, what are the components of engagement? And there's about 35 different components that all roll up into this, but three main categories that we look at. One is their donation history, the frequency of those donations and how often they're given, the amounts, of course. But then we're also looking at interactions. So virtual interactions, such as with email campaigns, as well as physical interactions with things like attending an event or maybe meeting somebody for coffee. So all of those pieces roll up into engagement. So at a glance, I can get a good idea of kind of how engaged are they with my organization, and use that as a metric then to send some segmented communications over time to keep them in the loop with things that are happening here at the organization. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention generosity, but I'm not going to go into too much detail there. There's an entire webinar series on generosity scores, but these can also be a really powerful score when taken in consideration with engagement. So when you see somebody who's got high generosity, they've got a high capacity to make larger gifts, that can kind of sometimes prioritize your time and your efforts, particularly for smaller organizations that aren't working with a big shop. And you've kind of got to pick and choose where you're spending your time. This generosity score can be super helpful there as well. Or if you've got somebody who's maybe making smaller gifts, but they are higher engaged, maybe they're a volunteer and they've got high generosity scores, that's pretty much a safe bet that those folks are just waiting for you to ask, and would love to maybe have a conversation with you about how they could be more engaged with you. As I go back to the dashboard, there's one question that I saw came up several times is, how do we go about calculating the engagement, the donor retention score? And so that's another beautiful thing about Bloomerang, is that we put it right here on the dashboard, front and center, keeping this top of mind for you. So over time, you can kind of keep an eye on this. And you see in my database here, I'm at 37%. That's a little low for where I really want to be with my organization. So what I'm going to do is click into this wheel here and take a look at who are my donors that have lapsed. So those are those donors that gave 2 years ago, but then have not made a gift since then. And so we want to try to see what we can do to build this out to see if I can build an engagement campaign and retain these folks. So once I click on that, then it's going to give me a list of who are all of those donors that, again, they gave 2 years ago, haven't given recently. And then I'm going to go ahead and just save this list. And I'm just going to call it retention campaign. And so I've got my 64 households here that I want to reach out and touch these folks. So I built an email, and I built a retention campaign here for these folks. And then what I'll do is take this cute picture here, this little puppy, and send this out to those folks that are in my retention campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that set of filters. And then for the details, I'm gonna make my subject, "We've missed you," just as a way to kind of call out and acknowledge the fact that this is going to donors that particularly haven't engaged with me recently, but I want to target that specific audience. So then I can go ahead and send this out. Once I do that, it's going to create for me an engagement tracking tab that I can use to see who has opened the email, how many people have clicked on links within the email. And of course, that data then is going to get rolled back up into the engagement score that we looked at earlier. And as soon as my computer catches up with me here, we'll take one last look. The other thing that Scott showed in one of those slides was the reason why donors have lapsed. And so one of the powerful pieces about this platform is the ability to pull and to query your donors over time. So there's a lapsed donor engagement survey, as well as an existing donor survey, and then we also have new donor surveys that are sent out on a scheduled basis for you. You can just literally, as Scott said, set and forget it. But these top lapsed responses are going to show you why it is that folks have lapsed. And in my case, a lot of folks switched to a different charity, but I also had some people that felt like I just didn't do a good enough job of telling them how their money was being used. And so in this case, I kind of know that maybe I need to step up my game around communications and give donors a little bit more of an understanding of what it is that I'm doing with their money within to further my mission. And you see another one that's kind of close by too is they didn't seem to need my support, which again kind of speaks to the same thing, that they just didn't feel appreciated and acknowledged or understand what it is that I'm doing. So from that I can build out again maybe an email segment to target some better communications around that particular piece as well. So there's a lot of tools that are, as you can see, baked directly into Bloomerang. We've done our best to build a platform that's easy to use for you. It's intuitive, but also gets you those key pieces that you need to be able to move the needle on retention and measure it. So with that, I think we've got some time for some Q&A, and I'll toss it back to Scott here.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate it. You can just leave your screen up for now in case there's any demo questions, but I'm going to just answer some of these chats. I was trying to type them up, but I'll just answer them live. So Scott, why is Kindful in the menu on the left? We have an integration with Kindful fundraising tools with Bloomerang. So for certain customers, if they add that enhancement to a subscription, they have the full suite of Kindful fundraising tools available right in Bloomerang. So that's why that icon's in that left menu. And then Miriam, for the integration with Grativid, that is based on your subscription. So with Bloomerang, so if you are a current customer, you can just contact, I would either just chat support or you can email directly. There's customer.accounts at bloomerang.com. But feel free to just chat support if you need to get pointed in the right direction. We all know how great Bloomerang support is. Joan, what about people who give through direct mail and do not share email contact? Great question. The research we found is that just really any personal touch is better than none. So we had a question earlier about if they don't have a phone number, then obviously the phone call stats go down, which is a really solid question. So obviously, if you can have a creative way of getting their phone number from having them, request their phone number. In some cases, it's just from, if you have like a constituent information form or something like a volunteer form that you can send them to get information, and then you want to make a call from there. That's one idea. But I would just say the research points into any personal touch. So if they only give you their address, can you send them a quick handwritten note? Or if they only have an email, send them a personal email. Really, one of the bigger points from today is just something is better than nothing when it comes to donor retention. So that third strategy, that was cultivation, I believe, if that was in the right order. So we had, let's see, sorry, I'm pulling up the other questions we had. Just in case we had a quick review of those 5 strategies: segmentation, personal touch, cultivation, feedback, and asking earlier. let's see, what else? What other questions we got? We still got plenty of time. We're doing great on time. Let's see, our handwritten notes, thank you, still worthwhile versus a phone call. So this is where, you know, we've seen that phone calls have a really high impact on donors. So that's why we're pulling these numbers. So if I had to pick between a phone call and a handwritten note, I think it depends on, you know, your workflow you have at your nonprofit. Are you able to handle handwritten notes for a certain amount of, you know, quantity of donations? I know I was in a situation just a few months ago, I had to make a lot of handwritten notes to somebody, and I thought I could knock this out in like an hour, and then suddenly it turned into the one-man operation of writing notes. It can quickly, you know, run stale. But so if you have a team that can help you do that, I think more power to do both. But I would just say I do think the power of a phone call and leaving that voicemail, kind of have them hear your voice, introducing yourself, really has some power to it. Yes, and 3 clicks from website to donate, how to get information. That's more or less like the buttons you have to click. So yes, you click donate, you kind of fill out the form, and then you do, you know, process donation and you know, and progress. So 3 clicks, technically there's some typing involved in there, but yes, good call out, John. This some forms, it can be a matter of just clicking, as long as it's their name, their card information, any of the required fields. But the goal there, John, is and what Seth was really trying to get at is go on your nonprofit's website, do a test transaction, see how it goes. Is there any frustrating point? Because if it's frustrating for you as a staff member, you can really rest assured it's going to be frustrating for a donor. So coming from support, I would see customers who might put their donate, you know, form in or their online form in a kind of a hidden area, or you have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, or they would have a landing page that you then have to click to another landing page. Just make it as easy as you can. The whole point is you want to reduce that donor attrition and keep people, just keep them right on the path for donation. So I made a call, someone was asking about PayPal. What tends to stink about PayPal is that they have to be pulled away to either another window or another modal to finish that donation. And anytime you have to redirect someone, you tend to lose donors. So that's why, you know, Bloomerang, we have an in-house payment processor to where all you have to do is sign up. It's included with your forms. There's no moving around to different sites. They just process donation in that same window. Easy peasy. Phone calls, time of day seem to matter. Great question. I would probably just say during the waking hours. I don't know if I have the research on hand for time of day, but I'll need to look into that. I am curious. I know there's a lot of research on email sends and time of day that people tend to open. You know, people tend to not open obviously in the working hours, but like when there's like lunch breaks or kind of built-in breaks in the day, or when people are selling in at home and just scrolling on their phone, that's when open rates happen a lot. Phone calls, I'm curious. Great question though. They're weekend calling. So yeah, and again, it also depends on your nonprofit, you know, so you have to know your donor, your base. And, you know, if you're working with families, maybe if you're a school foundation or, you know, you might have just certain hours you have to work with phone calls. So all about, yeah, even just feedback. If you can get feedback from, you know, a handful of your donors as to, hey, what's a good time to call, or you know, hey, just getting any of that feedback, that way you can continue to cultivate better relationships. I'm seeing, yeah, 7:30 to 8, interesting. So from Jane. So, you know, that would make sense. I feel like when people are caught at home and they're kind of selling in for the night, that can be a great time to get contacted. But, you know, again, I think just the answer there is it depends on your donors, and you know your donors best. I trust you all that you know your donor database or your donor base well. So still have like 10 minutes if I'm looking at the clock right. So I'll probably give about a few more minutes for any stray questions. Otherwise, we'll give the time back to you all. But any other questions for today's topic, or anything else you want to see in Bloomerang that Seth will be, you know, can show off for us? Ooh, retention, verbiage and lapse donors. Great question. So I'll actually pull up, I don't know if I have an example of that on hand right now. You know, I think it's important that you continue to share the story. So Dennis, for the verbiage, still acknowledging that they were a donor. I think it's important to know that you personalize that communication. So not just, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while, but you could remind them of like, hey, your donation made this impact. Have you considered? And I think another great strategy is for that second gift appeals is you can always offer for them to subscribe to like a monthly or recurring donor, but a lower price point or a lower amount. So maybe their first gift was $75. Maybe that second appeal, you say, hey, would you come on board for $30 a month? That can have a little bit more traction with people, and they might be on board. So just different strategies, things to think about. But I think the important part is communicating your mission. Tell me about Kindful. Yes, Kindful fundraising. So we have some really powerful tools. So it includes donation button, donation forms, peer-to-peer fundraising, and then you can also do like peer-to-peer campaigns. So a lot of powerful ways to fundraise more. So Bloomerang already comes with unlimited online forms, unlimited constituent and volunteer forms, email sign-up forms. But if you want capabilities like peer-to-peer and you can even have like a donor portal, that's all available in Kindful fundraising. If you go to our website, we have a number of kind of demo videos and on our YouTube as well of Kindful fundraising. You can kind of see it in action. Yes, we'll be sending some info about our services program. Absolutely. And yes, we will be sending materials out after this. I will try to get the recording. We're either going to have it sent to you or we typically put these on YouTube. Again, this is the first one of our kind of nonprofit success webinars. So we're gonna have some of this we're figuring out as far as the process down the road, but we'll be definitely getting these resources in your hands for sure. Payment solution integrate with WordPress websites. Yes, so our online forms, you get a snippet. So it's just a code snippet that you fill with WordPress. The catch with WordPress, sorry, I'm putting my support hat on at this point for some of these questions, but with WordPress is that I believe you have to have a plugin in order to accept the snippet. So all you have to do is just use one of the WordPress plugins, add the quick code snippet, and then that form will populate right on that page. If you get stuck, John, just ask Bloomerang support. They walk people through that every day. It's pretty quick process. Monthly giving program. So you can set up a recurring donation form, and you can essentially just put that on a page on your site, and then you can link that in like an email newsletter or some sort of appeal that you're sending out. You could integrate that with your communication plan if you want to be targeting monthly giving. So as far as like making the appeal to monthly giving, that's one side. That segmenting is very simple. You can run a report on anyone who has a recurring donation schedule, and then that will pull all of your monthly donors. Great question. Building our own donor portal. I do know that we're researching that. We're getting feedback on that, but at the moment, Bloomerang does not have that capability. But anything we can offer that's going to be making the donor experience easier, we want to be including. So definitely have that in the research pile. Okay. Last minute, last call. I'm gonna say it's 1:54, so we'll call it 1:55. Oh, let me check the Q&A section. Holy cow, I might have to go through here. So we got, okay, slides, yes, info, yes. I see, okay, Seth's getting one of those. How's the email look on the receiving end was another question. You can customize, I don't know if you want to pull up the email editor, Seth, and just see some of the templates, but they are fully customizable, truly. So you can make them look as simple and clean, or if you want to have a lot of images and links to videos. I always recommend just keeping it quick and easy, especially with email. Really think about when you receive emails, how much of it do you read? So on the receipt, what's nice with the email editor is if you open up one of these, Seth, there is a preview on this design tab once the template loads. So you can get a quick snapshot of, hey, like this is what it's gonna, a general idea. So this preview layout just above, right on this same page right there, next to send test. If you hit see above content there, Seth, and then you do preview. Oh, go back to make changes, or you can do that too. That works. Yep. So there's a quick snapshot, and you actually see how it looks from the donor side too. Okay. I love our email. I've done a number of classes on it, but I think it's super easy to use. I almost argue it can be easier to use in MailChimp at times. So as far as building the emails, so I for one am a fan of it. But yes. Okay, and yes, we'll be sending this information out as soon as we can. So, all right, I think that is all we got then. So thank you all for the participating, for asking all these questions, letting us know where you're coming from, all over the country, all over the world. So super excited. Again, we'll be sending this out, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you at the next success webinar. So everyone take care. Have a happy Tuesday. See you later.